So we've been talking today with Miriam Gabriel, who is an amazing leader, an amazing thought-provoking, challenging person who I can't wait to have more conversations with. So today, building on an amazing experience in community partnership and before that the private sector, Miriam is with Mercury Energy, and we're very fortunate to have had a wonderful conversation with her. And I challenge you to sit down, take some time and enjoy this wonderful podcast brought to you by ōNAC, the Ōtara Network, because it's our people and our community. Kia mai tātou.
This podcast is proudly supported by the Ōtara Network Action Committee, ōNAC, community-owned, community-driven and community-led.
When we first came, it was full of old washing machines and wet floors and all that kind of. So we had a school holidays, and this is like, it's got to be more than 10 years ago. Yeah. We had a holiday program, which is what we just finished celebrating, and which is organised chaos, beautiful chaos.
Beautiful chaos.
But this was a group of kids that were determined to transform this place into something that was wonderful. And then we had a blessing in Waikari Komene. Have you met him? Yeah. So Waikari did the blessing, and I've done it at other blessings too, where we touch the place, touch the walls, touch everything and everyone as we come through for the karanga.
Yeah.
And I still hold that day in my heart, and people, you know, and I'm really so happy that you feel like that, because the people we care about, Penny, the people we care about feel that. They really do. We know that we're going to really care about someone when they feel the layer on layer, you know, the lots of the lives that are growing here that we've been able to touch, and what a joy, but what an honour, and what a...
Yeah, I think that's important wairoa. I mean,
yes,
it is wairoa. It's actually, you know, and that's that thing of, you know, the tangible way of how we speak and how we are as Māori and Pacific. It's not words, but it's the action and it's the energy that's around us, you know. And unfortunately, you know, there is a negative picture or a negative narrative that always goes out around our Māori Pacific, but it's actually the richness that it comes with. I don't negate that some of our whānau are, you know, we're all challenged and we're all vulnerable and we all are living life the best way we can. But I think spaces like this particular place I always think about people that hold hope.
Oh, yes.
So I think of possibly all of those that have been through or are part of, you know, We Are Ōtara, you know, is actually the people that hold hope for people that may not feel that way, that have experienced trauma in life or just doing life and it's hard, but coming into places where they're welcomed, where they're awhi'd, where they're heard, does good for the soul. I just think, and that's that, you know, some of the best community engagement people that I know working across different sectors. So I actually worked in the corporate world for 20 odd years in the finance sector, and I honestly believe that everybody was exactly the same. Everybody had equal access. You know, I was so wrong when I walked into health, and I thought I really wanted it all care and no responsibility role, so kind of started out.
So you went to health.
So I went to health, you know.
It's a good dimension.
Yes, it's a good dimension. But I realised that what I was kind of missing was I just had to actually deconstruct my brain, because that wasn't the real world. I don't know what world I was living in, but
so you'd come, because we did a bit of research. So you'd come from your role in the finance sector, and then you went into
health.
You had the community development side at Waitaki, and then also I saw a breast cancer Aotearoa breast screening at McMurray Road, where I used to go for years. So I still go there, I think.
Yes.
But I loved it. I loved that space, and you know, they've got some fantastic artwork at Green Lane, but it's not quite the same. I loved walking into that old villa and the women, it was probably you, exuding love, but it was probably still very white too. I suppose that was a thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it was really kind of bringing our own different lenses or our own cultural lenses to be really advocating in that space. So yes, I came out of the finance sector after 20 odd years.
Bounced into community development and
in the health sector. Longer in the health sector. I did a lot of...
you went to radiography?
Yeah, I didn't go to radiography. I went in there...
Your role at
was working. Yeah, with breast screen was... I was their community liaison. I worked with primary care, so a lot of organisations, the DHBs. So I used to work around the equity space and actually the community engagement space. So I learned my craft of community development through them.
Yeah. So some pretty special people then.
Oh, some
and
amazing
all
people.
their people feel so about their body and just cruising into it, do this or you die. That's basically the message, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think when I actually came out of that corporate space and had to deconstruct my brain and reconstruct my brain with just with culture, just realising the different disparities amongst our community, what the big challenges were for ours, and that equal opportunity thing really kind of sailed out the window. But I was really fortunate, if I think about that same conversation back around the people that have run before this space, the heroes and community. I was really lucky to be covered by a couple of kuias and some older nannies that really helped me build my community lens. I mean, working with some of the team from Ngāti Whātua and from Tainui, but they just gave me a beautiful covering because it was my hunger to find out more about what's our true need of community. And it wasn't giving them another thing, it was actually being able to sit and to listen. And then actually saying, is in my space within health or in my space within community, what can I do to make a difference and change? So we used to do a lot of work around, cultural safety. When you're working with our people, it's a bit like they're very compliant because we deem these people as experts, but actually you need to lift your voice. If you feel uncomfortable, let them know. So it was actually giving them permission to speak.
Yeah, but also the parity that you see in conversations, whether that's on a marae or in a talanoa, that everyone has their role, but there isn't a sense of equity.
Yeah. And
as opposed to, I've got all the knowledge, and by the way, come and say when you can speak.
Come and do what I say. And it would be, honestly, we would be in there saying, well, no, if the patient or the person is important, then we actually really need to actually understand what the person's needs are. So we were trying to drive this cultural lens through a very
small needle.
Small needle was nice through this very structured way of thinking. It looks in some ways it felt like you were a salesman for screening, but it was like actually. We have to understand, do they understand consent? Do they understand why they're here? And actually, even from the artwork was really funny because we were actually pushing for, is the artwork reflective of our communities? Because that adds to the patient experience. It adds to our woman coming in. It adds to the actually, instead of cutting us up, can we think of us as a whole? How do we actually do that by creating partnerships or introducing different people? So there was lots of work in there, and I grew under people, and I was really lucky for that. Yeah,
I was just thinking about the creating a sense of accessibility, which is holistic. It's not just about a few words.
No.
And that tends to be that mainstream approach, isn't it? Well, I'll use a kupu Māori here and a kupu Pacifica here, and it'll be accessible. But, we're talking about some stuff that we just don't understand. It's not talked about, it's not understood. And
I think that
makes it inaccessible.
It does make it, it's the barrier, actually, because, and I think lots of... sometimes that's a little bit of the different lenses that people use, but there's an intention to do good, but sometimes they do harm because they haven't actually consulted with people.
Because they're so bloody arrogant, actually.
They've got one way of looking at things, and it's my way and the highway.
Yeah.
Where the other part of that is, you know, no matter how good you are, but are you guys the barrier? Are the organisations or the systems that we have in place, are they the barrier to actually people accessing help
And so often,
services or support?
So often it has been that authority figure who holds the knowledge that is the barrier. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And I think it's highlighting that.
So those are two levels of deconstruction that you're talking about there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Personal.
Yeah.
Actually, let's take another look at this. And you have that in your heart to do that.
Yeah.
And probably your mum and dad did too, so which is why we find it so easy. But then you've got this jolly barrier, the brick wall of the organisation, that the entity that has never thought that way, and so many of them never do.
And yet they want to do good, but there is that control thing that they have to let go of, you know, and that's probably the big part. Is I want to control it, but actually that becomes an issue in itself. So I suppose in that community development space was actually saying is, if your outcome is for better, healthy, whatever that outcome could be, actually your uniqueness is if you allow people to understand. So I think I've been talking to lots of people around, especially when you think about an outcome focus at the end, but the reality is the journey and the story is how. So I'll use a screwdriver to be an example. If I had a screw inside the wall and everybody says that was the outcome, was the screw, but nobody actually asks how the screw got in there. Because somebody might have used a screwdriver.
Why you want a screw there?
Yeah, why not screw? Somebody might have used a screwdriver, somebody might have used a drill, somebody might have used a knife. I says, but the gold is in this part, because that's actually how diverse our communities are. Because they look at things, the end result is they want to be healthy, or they want to be well, or they want to be connected, but they may use different ways to get there. Instead of saying there's a one size fits all, we already see it doesn't work. But it's actually saying allowing people to have the multiple ways of getting to the end result,
but their own way. That is actually the whakaaro that I've been putting together in terms of explaining how we run our holiday programs. That we have Pau, who are our rangatira. They lead. They lead the kaupapa in different areas for this program for the kids. So we, together we're moving forward. But what I've learned is this handing that whole, Miriam, I want you to put the screw in the wall, but how you do it is up to you. And so we have to have screws in walls, because otherwise we don't get any money from our funders. So I said, these are the funding outputs. Let's do some stuff around that so we get the output, and then leave it alone.
I think where we can test that particular ways, because I know we often are dancing the funders dance, is what I call it.
Yeah, it is.
And it's probably the ways to be able to show different ones. It's like different ways of reporting.
Yeah, so we've been trying that. I mean, we have been using podcasting and reporting, which is kind of fun. But also a lot of video. I don't want to write you 10,000 words that you're not going to read about what happened and how life-changing it was and how miraculous it was. Because it has no magic. It
has no magic. And I think actually one of the magic is actually looking at their policies to say, actually, if there is a diversity and inclusion policy, and this is how you are going to be inclusive, by allowing us to report the way that Indigenous languages are non-oracle. So actually, beyond the outputs, you go back to the other part and says, do you have an inclusive policy? Do you have and actually going up to go down? So those are one ways of doing it. It's almost like the languaging. You still get the same output, but it's just done in a way. So often what happens is it's done in a way that they don't understand, and yet they want us all to understand this.
It's a screw in the wall, baby.
Screw wall, I think. So I kind of I talk to people about actually go further up the trail, have a look at what they're actually saying, what it is in their policies, what is looking at that kind of work there, and actually saying is we are achieving this under your inclusion. We are achieving this under, equitable outcomes, because this is a way that our rangatahi or whatever group you're working with, this is the way that they actually work.
Yeah.
So has it achieved your outcomes? Yes.
Yeah.
So I think one of the projects that I worked on a couple of years back is a youth talanoa, and we were working with some high schools, and they were talking about, we need a mental health, and I was going, I get that, and so they just wanted to block things into slots.
Yeah, of course.
As we all do, because we broken down into agendas.
No, fuck of that.
And
I refuse it, so I'm not a corporate girl anymore.
Yeah, so I was really fortunate, and I'd never seen it before, but I actually witnessed a spoken word workshop, and it was just magic. I had never seen anything like it before, but in seeing that, actually, I just said to them, okay, so when you look at this particular exercise from these young people, so these rangatahi were there, and they were intermediate and high school, and I says, they don't know each other, so we purposely split everybody up. I says, watch their body language. No one's really talking. I says, but watch the exercise unfold before you. As he taught them, they leant in. Physically, they leant in. As they had to work together, they started talking. And actually, in the end, they were all presenting. I said, so this is our civil duty. Actually, well-being, because they have learnt to speak out. So it says, and this, what you call deemed a mental health component is, we've just done this in a more holistic way. And we did it using spoken word. So if you look at it from the wider perspective of how to do this, so when I talk about community development, is let's not do the box thing, but actually we are saying we achieved all what you have asked us to do. And we can evidence this by we got people connected. We allowed different voices to be heard. Our civil duty was actually they elevated their voice to share. So these are all tools that they are naturally doing. We just haven't equated that to, that's a civil service exercise. Actually, the way that, because they're able to express themselves from inside out, it's taken the stuff that they carry, which can be so burdensome for them. And there was some really deep poetry that kind of came out, but they were able to speak to that.
So, I'm thinking, Miriam, about that transition from your community partnership roles into this amazing role you've currently got with Mercury Energy. And as you know, the beautiful Helen is somebody I've known and loved for 20 years now. So, maybe not quite 20 years, but it must be getting that far, not too far away. And we're just such an amazing. Well, she's just such an amazing woman. She's so I imagine that you and I, being mere mortals, there might have been a vague fear factor, saying, I suppose I'll accept that amazing job that I've always wanted.
So I mean, Helen and I had actually crossed paths over years.
Of course you had.
In the health sector and with her in energy. So I was really excited to see just her drive and her passion really for community and really kind of elevating those voices back to our executives in Mercury. So when the opportunity for her job to come up came vacant, and I know that was quite difficult for her. There was an opportunity for her to take an executive role, which is super exciting, but she goes with taking all of those voices and those conversations and experience that she's had in community to do something really amazing around the payment solution stuff.
That's the only reason why we let you go.
But I think the weight of coming in behind Helen, it was. She's a formidable force. So I know that even my own experience in community, there is a currency that we use, which is not money. Its currency is relationships and high levels of trust. So knowing that I was coming into her role, it was a little bit of intrepidation because I was going to come into community networks that she's been part of, has grown with and learnt so much with, to actually this is the new girl on the block, and everyone's going to go, who's she? And I totally get it, being in community, because it is really about the relationships are so key. So I just knew that I was coming into some amazing shoes, an amazing legacy. So I think for me, really conscious of the stuff that Helen had done in past, it was important that, you know, I continue that on. You're obviously slightly different. I'm not as tall as Helen.
No. And you haven't married...
No, I haven't married David Tuop. You
No.
know, praise God, she'd be very happy about that. But you just realising that there's some amazing, strong Pacific people out there that are really kind of trying to use their platforms to elevate not just the needs, but also the celebrations, how we work, how we do things is not the same as others, you know. So I think there has been that.
And it works is the most important thing.
That's right.
How successful is brand Helen?
I have laughed at her. I've heard her honestly say in meetings, stay in your lane. And I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have said it quite like that, but yes, you are right.
So true.
Yeah, so stay in your lane, you know. And I know that her history with Mercury, she's so well respected.
Not just Mercury. I mean, I don't think she was at Mercury. I wasn't aware of where she worked when I first met her, but there was this amazingly powerful woman that was hell bent on lifting our people.
That's
actually.
right. Disconnecting nobody. So that power was accessible, you know. It was so, and so she continues on, and she uses her platforms to kind of also look at not just within her space of our sphere of work, but actually also just that reach into different corporates, having a chat to them about, you know, often we're finding we're getting invitations from other corporates to talk about what is actual community engagement, how do you do that? And I kind of think our foundations are actually who we are as people. Our community development comes with us with our own lived experience. I always say this, community development actually starts at home.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
You serve at home, you kind of are looking to kind of, how do I do that in my own workspaces?
You give everyone a voice.
Yeah.
You're fair at every step.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. But I think those are what we sometimes there is this whole thing about you've got to have all of these skills, but I think naturally we have the skills. We just don't actually write them off as skills.
Yeah.
So, you know,
but isn't that part of our role as mentors and encouragers?
Yeah.
Encouragers of our fellow people, and that's what I love.
Yeah.
Encouraging, but also receiving the encouragement.
Yeah.
Vinny's been my mentor just as much as I've been his. Really, and you know, often, you know, we have had difficult conversations with people, but
I think that
I really value that the equity in our relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. The man behind the camera sees everything, and he's not on show. And he also knows what it's like to have the camera flipped on him. I'm going to learn how to be a producer, so I can be the second producer. but you do know. Yeah, I mean, that's the point, that Vinny knows what it's like. So that, like, in this inside this room, this whole opportunity to learn.
Yeah. And I think that we have to remember that we are life learners.
Yes.
But what we think sometimes is really insignificant is quite significant in different places. What you realise, the taonga or the knowledge that you have to come in the corporate space where you kind of think, oh, that's just actually our ability to connect and communicate with people is like gold. And they go, oh, how did you do that? I said, well, you know, you welcome them in, you gave them a cup of tea. You know, we understand that we're here because we're relational. And actually, it's not about I'm going to come in and take everything from you, but this is a reciprocal relationship.
Yes. The reciprocity is absolutely fundamental. Yeah.
And people sense that before you've even opened your mouth. I mean, that's the coming into community meetings. You could almost see that when I came in, it was like everyone's sizing me up. They're trying to figure out, you know.
Have you come for a few bucks?
Yeah. You know, are you going to be the person that comes in with the pānui and not care about our community?
Yeah.
You know, and so I use the terminology of being in community or working in community or community engagement is not speed dating. It's a long courtship.
Yeah, it is, and it's forever. It is forever, till death. Death part, yes.
And it's actually that is exactly what you're talking about. That mentoring or the receiving and giving, they're both equal. Because I'd like to think that I'm always constantly learning something new, because it's exciting.
But aren't we lucky?
Yeah.
My God, aren't we lucky? Because it ain't like that in the corporate sector. It's just not.
It is a little bit different coming from community and health into corporate. It is.
Yeah, well, except that you came because you're allowed to be community inside the corporate.
Yeah.
But and I don't miss at all those days where no one cries, no one ever says anything that's important or true. And there is no reciprocity.
Yeah,
One day I've been out for 20 years, perhaps it's all changed. Not.
It's certainly it's different because obviously in corporate it's a lot more structured. And learning to be yourself within that space is really important. And I think if I was going to, when I talk to young people, it's about actually the discovery is discover yourself first. Before you output.
Becomes your korowai as you walk forward,
Because that allows you to stand in those really tough situations, that grounding of knowing. And, like I didn't, when I talk about the deconstruction and reconstruction, I really had an identity crisis coming into my late 20s. I won't give you my age now, but... And so I'm a real champion. Yes, I'm a real champion with... people, I call ourselves the lost generation. My parents did the migration. We were both single when they arrived here, and I now think about them and their journey and how they've survived, and coming here with no English, arriving, getting on a boat, going to Fiji, getting on a plane, landing in Whenuapai. And then, taking the migration from west to central, and with very little support as we know it. They were coming into a much bigger metropolitan village, but not quite disconnected even within that. But I just think about their journey to come here. It was really unfortunate in the dawn raids that it kind of impacted my dad, but it's just around the resilience to come here because actually they wanted a better life, but in that adopted, this whole ways of living, and in that I kind of lost culture. We kind of lost culture in that. So in that reconstruction, that was a thing that I was treasuring the most, because it was the part of me that was missing. So that's
access to the ability to reconstruct who you are.
Yeah. And that came from many inputs, different inputs, different viewpoints, and that was the learning to reconstruct. So when I talk to, especially when I'm talking to younger people, my own children, it's around know thyself. And to know that we come from really rich heritages. We may not own a house here, but know that you have land from whatever island you come from, whatever iwi hapu you come from. You have your DNA in the soil, and is actually realising that we come from very
with
rich...
With your tupuna that have gone before you.
Yeah. We come from wealth. We don't come from poverty. So if we actually
wealth and health.
Yeah. So it's kind of thinking about, how do we proceed that forward for a future for our generations to come.
That's absolutely critical. That is something. So that's a really nice segue into probably my last point that I wanted to cover off with you, was that this thing I've been exploring, so I need your whakaaro on this. So I've been talking about it as, I wrote it down beforehand. I talked about it as, I only wrote down the news, so it's an equity conversation, but it's what was described to me by an amazing woman I've been working with at council as the circular economy. So what we've been doing here is using incredibly highly skilled practitioners like Vinny and Will, who's his shadow still is over us, and we think very much of him and his wisdom, and he's the one that we wouldn't have a podcast studio without him. But now we also have Daniel, who is a very talented videographer. So we've got the podcast side.
Yeah.
So the tools that we need, our toolkit, to carry our stories and our news, the good news, carry forward. So actually the rest of the world's trying to do that too. And they want the outputs. They want the podcasts, because it's very fashionable to have podcasts. They want the videos. So why don't we bring our young people into those roles as professionals? So Vinny is the walking truth of that. That's is cool. Producer number one. And on the other side we have Anna, who's Anna and Maker, who are both working as professional photographers and videographers under the tutelage, I think it's weird, the mentoring leadership of one of the country's most experienced people, who has also had, we all need that epiphany. Oh my God, what we're doing is not enough. So they brought to the table this whole thing. So we sang, and council's heard us in one situation already, and hopefully more. Don't use those TV shops that agencies, flash agencies on Queen Street. Come to the community where you'll get absolutely the best output, better than what you've got. Plus, you're bringing another whole generation with you. And if they do that, spend local. If you're, we won't name organisations, but for entities, local entities, to bring someone out from town to shoot a video, hell no, not on my watch. No more. I'm going to get my protesting shoes back on. But
her activator.
There's no excuse. And we're so lucky that we've got some quite nice traction with that already, with our teams at going out and doing things. And I find that really exciting. But it was this amazing content that we've got. We don't want to out people on videos, but the notion of the circular economy made here for Ōtara by Ōtara, which is what we've been saying here for 20 years. But that's absolutely it. And it's how do we take that message? That if you want a thing, it's particularly digital stuff, because our community is so jolly good at that sort of thing. How can we create more opportunities where they can be paid to do things, so that we can employ more people, so that we can keep our young leaders growing?
I mean, if I was going to kind of recommend anything, would be to create your story and your aspirations. I think there is becoming a great attraction. It's quite funny, people coming back from overseas of our Māori Pacific that are sitting in places that are incredible, but it's almost like being able to network through them, because they are influences of actually potentially we want to look at. It is actually taking that equity conversation about having opportunities. I mean, I'm a little bit of we can continue to upskill, but if we have no opportunity opened up, then that's
it's a market making. Really,
it's a market making thing. So it's kind of quite hard, because we then begin to sing their song, but it's our own unique way of doing it. We still get to choose.
It's still the screw in the hole.
The screw in the hole, the screw in the wall.
Well, it doesn't even have to be a wall.
It doesn't have to be a wall. It could be anything. It could be the table. But I think telling the aspirations of actually how that impact is of the opportunity to become the first producer. What does that mean? Not just in dollar value, but actually in inspiration. How that impacts on our wider community. And the reality is often, although we're negatively in stats right across the board, I said to them, if you really want to make a difference, then we're going to have to invest here. Because if you don't invest here, this is going to perpetuate. So it's about actually talking to the people that we know that have connections. Because let's face it, sometimes when we do things, We don't go to the yellow pages. Well, that's odd. We don't go to the internet. We talk to somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody.
Yeah.
So actually we're going to have to use our coconut wireless.
Yeah.
And it is eco-friendly. It's climate change because we're not using anything else other than a connection point. But it's actually that story of what you want to do.
Yeah.
To elevate our creative peoples of Ōtara that can serve beyond, let's face it, the world is the oyster.
Service beyond boundaries.
Yeah, yes. Service beyond boundaries. It's okay. You can do that for funding. But it's around actually that and actually being able to place that in the hands of people that actually, who do we know in council? Who do we know in primary industry? Who do we know in thing? And actually...
And who do we know that actually cares, isn't it, too? It's about reaching out to those, the rich pasture of those.
Because sometimes they actually go to those people by default because they don't know anyone else. And so that's comes sometimes lazy. But they actually think, because we know these people, we have a relationship with them, but they haven't had the opportunity. But it's actually saying is, hey, if you want to do good, but actually you guys don't have the capacity to do it in this way, but why not give the opportunity to... It may not be the big project, it could be the small project. So it's, I think, getting the village to talk to the wider village.
I love that. Okay, shall we... I kept on wanting to take notes, but then I'm thinking, actually, we've got this recorded. We'll be able to take this tutorial, Miriam's tutorials, and learn from it. It's so true. I love the way these podcasts go because it is like, I don't know.
It's organic.
It is organic.
Yeah.
And when you've got someone that loves to have big ideas and loves to talk and loves to share, how lucky we are. Thank you.
Yeah. It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
That's wonderful.